The Adidas Adios 9 versus the Nike Streakfly versus the Nike Rival Fly 4. Three traditional low-stack race flats. How do you decide which one is right for you? This is actually my first three-way versus video, but really this video is a comparison between this, the Adidas Adios 9, and this, the Nike Rival Fly 4. But to get here and to talk about how these two shoes compare, we need to go through one other shoe, and that's the Nike Streakfly. Because these two shoes really relate to one another, and I think anyone who loved this shoe, and I definitely love this shoe, is going to love this shoe, and they're curious how these two compare. So we need to start here. And as always with my versus videos, let's start with the specs. Now, quickly looking at all three of these shoes together, the interesting thing here is even though we're spanning 3 years and multiple generations, the specs are relatively the same. Interestingly, the oldest shoe here, the Nike Streakfly from 2022, is still the lightest, though the Adios 9 is fairly close, and the Rival Fly 4 is the heaviest of them. And then the feel of each one of these shoes is quite a bit different. The Adios 9 is very agile, the Streakfly is very resilient, and the Rival Fly 4 is soft, and I would call that somewhat traditional. So with that being said, let's look at the Adios 9 versus the Streakfly. And looking at the Adios 9 and the Streakfly, I think the thing that stands out here is the specs are really kind of the same. It's actually quite interesting because there's about a 3-year difference between these two shoes. The ride characteristic of the Adios 9 is what I would call agile. The new Lightstrike Pro foam is very airy, very soft. You sink into it. It's got a lot of resilience, but it's not quite as resilient as ZoomX always has been. So you get more sink and more energy return in the Streakfly. However, Adidas has really leaned into everything that made the Streakfly work really well, and they brought that into the Adios 9. I would say the Adios 9 is even more Streakfly in feel, and it has more durability because some of the construction in the outsole. So it's going to be a very traditional geometry, just like the Streakfly, but it's going to be a very modern ride because you have that soft, slipper-like feel of the outsole, which I'll get to, the wonderful, soft, airy foam underfoot, and in a package that is very lightweight and very durable, really building on everything that made the Streakfly really great. And moving to the outsole and contact patch of these two shoes, as you can see from a dimension standpoint, they're actually pretty similar. And with the margin of error of me doing this with a ruler by eye, they're probably nearly identical. Now the heel in the Nike Streakfly is a little bit wider, but all of that width is all in a medial heel flare, which added a lot of stability to that shoe, and it's something I always noticed in that shoe, even though I'm a 4-foot striker. But one of the biggest tangible differences between these two shoes is the outsole, and that makes a huge difference in both the durability and ride of these two shoes. On the Adidas Adios 9, the new Adidas Light Traction outsole, or CPU outsole, cast polyurethane outsole, is much lighter, much more flexible, much more durable, and in this case, it's a complete coverage from toe to heel. But you're not getting the drawbacks of a rubber outsole because the outsole is not rubber, it's cast polyurethane, and you're getting increased durability. So you're getting all of the feel and the compliance with the ground because the material is very flexible, very soft, but you're getting all of the durability and protection of all of that very soft midsole foam, which was always an issue with the Nike Streakfly. Now, that big piece of rubber in the forefoot of the Nike Streakfly was always great, but all of that exposed ZoomX foam, especially right behind where the rubber stops in the forefoot, into the midfoot, would just get torn up. And the durability of the Streakfly just wasn't there for general road running, easy running, all the stuff that I think a lot of us love this shoe for. However, that's not going to be a problem with the Adidas Adios 9. You're going to have complete coverage, complete protection, and probably the best durability of any shoe in your rotation with this outsole. Comparing the uppers of these two shoes, starting with the Streakfly, I always liked this upper. It's not really a fly knit or an atom knit. It just was a engineered mesh upper. But I always did find it a little bit baggy and roomy in the forefoot, especially at the base of the eyelet chain. There's just a lot of material down there. And I don't have a particularly narrow foot, but I also don't have a wide foot, but I'd still have to bunch the laces in quite a bit, and I'd still get some bunching here at the bottom of the eyelet chain. It just never gave me the exact fit I wanted, especially for faster running. But the shoe was so flexible that it never was really a problem. Whereas on the Adidas Adios 9, this new microfit upper material, which is a one-way stretch, very limited stretch, very soft, very compliant, very un-Adidas-like upper material, just wraps around the foot, is very soft on the foot, very compliant to the foot, and it just really holds your foot into this shoe, very slipper-like. This shoe runs on the ground and feels on the ground from the midsole, very slipper-like, but it also fits your foot because of this upper, very slipper-like. There's no additional room in this upper. It's a very race fit upper, and I think overall the fit of the Adios 9 is just better than it ever was on the Nike Streakfly. And speaking of the fit, these are both US men's size 9. Now, I always found the Nike Streakfly to be a little long. I could almost go down half a size in this shoe. I never did, but I always felt like I could because, again, there was just a lot of room in the forefoot of the shoe as far as volume, but I always did find it a little bit long. Whereas in US men's size 9, in the Adios 9, this is very true to size, nearly the perfect fit for my foot, exactly what I want in a race foot as far as length. My big toe is about a pinky's width away from the front of the toe, whereas on this one it's about a thumb's width. So it really depends on how you like your shoes to fit, but I would recommend to start true to size in both these shoes, and if you ran in whatever size you ran in the Streakfly, start there with the Adios 9. And lastly, the midsole of these two shoes, that's what really set the Streakfly apart. This was just a very soft, very flexible, no stiffening agent in the shoe. There's no plate, there's no rods. There is a midfoot shank in the shoe, just like the Adios 9, but it wasn't a propulsive thing. It was there to keep the twist of the shoe down, the torsional twist of the shoe. But any of us who ran in this shoe loved this shoe because it was so soft, so low to the ground, so flexible, so much ground feel, so much proprioceptive feedback. This was an amazing shoe. It just didn't have the durability. However, in the Adios 9, we have all of that feel. We have most of the energy return. I'd say 90% of the energy return or resilience that was in this shoe, with just a much more durable package that frankly just fits better. I've always been a fan of the Nike Streakfly. I started this channel to talk about the Nike Streakfly. The first video on this channel is about the Streakfly. But in 2025, this shoe is finally going to be replaced, and it's going to be replaced with this. This is the first official image, though it is still technically a leaked image, of the Streakfly 2. This will be coming out later in 2025, and this is a completely different shoe. This is a carbon-plated shoe with, as you can see, extreme forefoot rocker and toe spring in this shoe. And when you look at the Streakfly and the Streakfly 2, you can't even really compare these shoes anymore. The shoe you should really be comparing the Streakfly 2 to is really the Dragonfly or the Dragonfly 2. The Streakfly 2 is really going to be a Dragonfly for the road, a very aggressive, very fast, really race flat for the road, really specializing in those shorter distances and really complementing the Vaporfly and the Alphafly. It's going to be an excellent shoe, and as soon as I can get a pair, I will be covering it in depth on this channel because it's one of my most anticipated shoes for 2025. And with that being said, I will be back probably talking about the original Streakfly one last time when I do that comparison to the Streakfly 2 whenever that shoe comes out, and that will be the final goodbye to the Streakfly. It's been a great shoe. I've really enjoyed running in it, though I do think the Adios 9 is probably a better, more durable Streakfly, and the Streakfly 2 is going to be quite an exciting shoe. And that brings us here, the real comparison of this video, the Adidas Adios 9 versus the Nike Rivalfly 4. These are the two current race flats for Adidas and Nike going into 2025, and they could not be more different. From a spec standpoint, they're similar, though the specs for the Rivalfly 4 are, from me measuring, there's no official specs from Nike, but they're in that ballpark. The biggest difference between these two shoes is that the drop in the Adios 9 at 7 mil feels much flatter. It really feels like 3 to 5, whereas in the Rivalfly 4, it's 8 mil and it feels like 8 mil. And that's a spec from Nike that we've actually gotten. That shoe really puts you up on your toes in a very traditional way. Now, the Adios 9 is quite a bit lighter, and you do notice that on foot, and that just goes to the more slipper-like feel of the Adios 9 over the Rivalfly 4. The Rivalfly 4 is a very traditional feel, both in ride because of the materials, the Cushionline 3.0 midsole with that midfoot TPU shank and a very prominent forefoot air zoom unit. It's very Pegasus 37-esque if you've ever ran in those. It's very prominent. and it's got a very traditional geometry, and because of those materials, it's got a very traditional ride as well. Whereas in the Adios 9, because that is full Lightstrike Pro, the new 2025 formula with a small nylon shank in the midfoot to control twist of that shoe, you get a very traditional geometry, but a very modern ride because of the materials. And that is what contributes to the agile ride of the Adios 9 and the soft ride of the Rival Fly 4. And moving to the outsole and contact patch of these two shoes, from a spec standpoint, the contact patch of these two shoes are nearly identical. And as I said, my margin of error doing this by eye with a ruler is probably making these nearly identical. And when you line them up next to each other and put them sole to sole, they really do overlap nearly perfectly with one another. But the ride characteristic, because of the outsole on these two shoes, is incredibly different. And the outsole really is the ride difference. Now, I've already spent a bunch of time talking about the slipper-like compliant feel of the Adios 9 in the light traction or CPU outsole of that shoe and what it does. But in the Nike Rival Fly 4, you have a very traditional Nike outsole on there with a bunch of patches of rubber in the forefoot, which have different tread patterns, which honestly, it looks strange, but it works quite well on road and track, especially track. Really great grip on the track. In the heel, you have really good rubber coverage, and in the midfoot you actually have Nike's reductor design, removing material of the midsole to save weight, but also expose that TPU midfoot shank in that shoe, which again is there to control the twist of the shoe underfoot and make it a little bit more stable. But both these shoes do the job, they just do the job very, very differently because of these outsoles. And looking at the uppers of these two shoes, there could not be a bigger difference here. In the Adidas Adios 9, again, this is Adidas's latest and greatest upper material called Microfit. It's got a bunch of technologies in it. As I said, it's very soft, very compliant, very slipper-like on the foot. Whereas on the Rival Fly 4, this is just a woven mesh upper. And honestly, it's nothing that's going to win any awards because it's really nothing special as far as material. And it's a little bit complicated. There's a lot going on in this upper. Honestly, I think a lot of the weight of this shoe is actually in this upper. If Nike used a more premium material in this upper, they could drop the weight of the shoe considerably. But as it is, it's a good upper. It's just not going to win any awards. Now, a couple things that are very interesting about this is that there is a lot of padding back here in the heel. The Achilles flare is very padded with a deep pocket back here, which is good because this is quite a flexible shoe. We do have the same tongue design and materials as the Zoomfly 6, which is good, and it shows that this is current generation Nike. And in the toe box, we have decent volume, but something I pointed out quite a bit in the Zoomfly 6 review that I did was that there's a lot of volume in the toe area of the shoe. The lateral toe box taper is much less extreme in this. It's a much more squared off toe in the shoe. Now the width of the shoe is a race flat. This is not a wide shoe, but there's a lot of volume from this point forward. So there's a lot of room for your toes. And when you're toeing off in the shoe, it feels like there's more of a platform up here. You still very much have the Nike feel where you're really toeing off on the big toe. Link in the description to a video going in depth to that whole subject. But again, like the Zoomfly 6, there's just more surface area up here, so you feel just a little bit more stable and it feels just a little bit more compliant to get up on your toes and have a nice platform to really toe off. It's a really nice feeling in this shoe overall. And that brings us to the midsole of both these shoes, and again, they could not be more different. This is new formula, Lightstrike Pro, the 2025 formula. Light, airy, resilient, bouncy, soft, flexible. I've said that a lot in this video already about the shoe. This is Cushalon 3.0, which is a more traditional foam from Nike. This is a very soft shoe, is a very flexible shoe, but it's just got a much more traditional feel than this does. And with that very prominent forefoot air unit right under the ball of the foot, you're really getting that pop from the air unit. If that's something you like, you're going to really have that in this shoe, and it's going to be very, very nice for those who like the feel of Zoom Air underfoot. Another way to see the performance of these three shoes is with my performance matrix. So if we put all three on here and we start with the Adios 9, the range of the Adios 9 is really steady into max effort, though the orange or red area is the real sweet spot. The Adios 9 wants you going all out. Intervals, reps, racing, up on your toes, really fast running, put a lot of energy into the ground. That's where that shoe is happiest. Moving to the Streakfly, again, similar range. I think that max effort stuff is where the Streakfly always was the best. I loved it for track workouts, especially, just like I do the Adios 9. But I think the range was a little bit less than the Adios 9. I think some of that is the outsole and the feel of the outsole. I just never found that the Streakfly was really great for steady running it. It started to come alive at threshold and beyond. Whereas the Adios 9 really can do some steady running, and the more effort you put into it, the better the shoe gets. And with the Rivalfly 4, I think the range is, again, very similar. It's a max effort shoe. These are all race flats. It makes sense that the sweet spot for them is in that intervals, reps, and racing area. Up in your toes, a lot of energy into the ground, going really fast, quick turnover, fast feet, all of that. But I do think the Rivalfly 4 goes a little bit more under threshold. It can handle a little bit more pace, closer to something like a marathon pace, whereas the Streakfly just wanted to be going faster, 10K pace and beyond. And the Adios 9 can really handle all of it very, very well. Now, like a lot of us who ran in race flats pre-super shoe era, we also like race flats for easy running. And all three of these shoes have a secondary range of easy running. I think they all handle easy running very well. Daily training, using this for easy running once or twice a week, really great options. I think between these three shoes, the Adios 9 is going to be the most durable. That's going to be the one that you can do most of that running in. Though the Rivalfly 4 is definitely no slouch, and it's really built where it can withstand a lot of effort and it will take a lot of miles in that shoe. So both the Adios 9 and the Rivalfly 4 significantly increase the range and durability over the Streakfly. So what's the verdict here? Between these two shoes, which one am I going to pick? Well, I think if I can only have one of these two shoes, I'm going to take the Adios 9. I just think this shoe has everything I want in this style shoe. It's essentially the Nike Streakfly, but more durable. I'm getting all of that soft, flexible feel underfoot, that very low stack ride, lots of ground feel, lots of proprioceptive feedback, but in a much more durable package because of this new outsole, which is a great material. So this shoe is going to give me a ton of range. Additionally, I have an upper fit that is exceptional. I love this new microfit upper from Adidas. It's very slipper-like on foot, and this is exactly what I want in this type of shoe, whether I'm doing a speed workout where I want to work on mechanics and really feel the energy transfer to the ground from my feet, or I'm looking for a shoe that's just really comfortable and really slipper-like for easy running. This is what I'm going to pick for all of the same reasons I used to rely on the Nike Streakfly, but now I'm going to rely on the Adidas Adios 9. However, this shoe is a ton of fun. I've done a ton of track workouts in this shoe. I've used the Rivalfly 4 as really a track flat for the most part. When I don't want to put on a pair of spikes, I'll put on this shoe, and it's been exceptionally good. The midsole is much more traditional, and sometimes I miss that. It's that softer feel with the very prominent forefoot air unit. It's just got a very different ride. It's a very Nike ride, if you know what I'm talking about. The other thing I really love this shoe for is hill work, hill reps especially, because this shoe just feels great up on the toes. The air unit's really giving me some leverage, really doing a lot of those hill sprints, and it's great. So what I'm actually going to say is if you're someone who likes traditional race flats and you ran in Nike Streaks and older Adidas Adioses and maybe Flyknit racers from Nike way back when, you probably want both of these shoes because they're both traditional race flats, but they're giving you very different rides. This is the more modern one. This is the more traditional one. And this shoe's great sometimes. This shoe's great other times. So again, if you're someone who loves traditional race flats, definitely you're going to want to look at both of these and probably pick up both. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.